the yoke I found my peace. Well, slow down my thoughts with ease. Tired of chasing what I left. Under the yoke, yeah, that's all I need. Under the yoke I found my peace. World, slow down my thoughts with ease. Tired of chasing what I can't keep. Under the yoke, yeah, that's all I need. Part of Monilyn.
All right, first and foremost, I just want to get into you. And, maybe you could tell us, who is Miss Pam Depte?
I've always been just a little black girl that always cared about her culture. And I've always been for the underdog, the runt of the litter, the one that always needed a hand up.
Yeah.
I always grew up knowing to help my fellow man. So I always was my brother's keeper. My mom always taught me when you come outside, if you don't have a cookie for everybody, you can't bring a cookie outside.
Yeah.
So I always learned to share, and I never felt it robbery to ever give anything I had to anybody that needed some.
So that started out as a young age.
A very young age.
Big heart. So I was indoctrinated in the household.
Yes.
So as you grew up, you carried that with you.
Yes. My children also.
Yeah. So you carried that onto your own offspring.
Yes.
And stuff like that.
Yes.
That's good. Each one teach one.
That's it.
And I know you speak a lot about the village. I see a lot of that on the internet.
Yes.
Village, where you at, calling people accountable.
Mm-hmm.
So the village we here to talk about today is Oak Street.
That's it.
So let's talk about when you first moved up Oak Street. What age was, how was it up there when you first moved up there?
I really was going through a breakup time that I needed my own, and I lived in Lumber Street, and the house was really in shambles. It was in a bad shape, but I had my children, and I was by myself, single mom, and the opportunity came just when I needed it to come up to this brand spanking new apartment complex with all the water, cabinets, closets that you could even dream of. And it was a snowy day, and I believe it was in February, and they called me to come and get my keys. The best day of my life. I don't know. I think back then they didn't really have U-Haul trucks. So I had 2 pickup trucks and an old station wagon, and I packed everything I thought I had or even needed. And I came up the day they gave me my keys so I could come into my new place. And it began a new factor in my life. Mm-hmm. It really gave me some worth right when it looked like the struggle was bad.
Yeah. So the feeling you had was hope.
It was great hope.
Yeah, it was hope.
Great hope. And by it being new, I never had anything new. I've worked since I was 17, and had my children. But it was always hard. It was a struggle. And it wasn't as nice as the American dream, the picket fence. They always told you, if you work hard, you can have your own. But it wasn't coming, it seemed like, fast enough for me.
Right.
And Oak Street just put me a step further in really continuing to dream the dream.
Yeah, that's dope.
Dope.
So when you moved up there, you already had children?
Yes, I already had my children.
How was it raising kids in an environment like that? At the beginning?
At the beginning, my children were happy because, again, new. They had closets to hang their clothes. Their clothes weren't in laundry baskets because you didn't have dressers. All of those things that the struggle comes with when you're trying to be young, and furniture and beds and bunk beds and things, when you're in that poor to moderate range. Even though you work, we're kind of under the level of being well off, so to speak.
Right.
Always had plenty of food, though, because, in the black family, you're going to eat.
Yeah, it's always gonna be some
You're going to
food
have
around.
food.
Yeah.
You're going to have pots. So we had plenty of that, but just having things and nice couches and not secondhand, it just gave us an opportunity to have some nicer walls and paint and, get a little structure to our lives to see the future.
Yeah, me being younger, I know enough to know that back then life was a little bit more simpler. You can appreciate the small things. Like,
yes.
Like probably now we wouldn't understand that.
No, because you didn't have to have a lot.
Yeah.
Even to have a car back then, that was a big thing.
Yeah.
To have an automobile.
Yeah.
So, to have a car and have a job, you were kind of like, in our eyes, a little middle class a little bit and have a paycheck.
Right.
Because most people were dealing with welfare and things like that.
Now, we had spoke earlier, and you said that it was some up here that was working, some not working. It's
Yes.
different. So, while you were living up here, like,
Yes.
what was the job that you maintained?
I worked in the courthouse.
Right.
I came out of school in the stenography program. So I took shorthand, I typed. So I went into Chester County Courthouse, in an internship when I was 17.
17. Okay.
Yes.
That was something that you like to do?
It is. I've been a secretary all my life. Just now I did 24 years in the courthouse, came out for a year, and then I put in 19 years at Tabernacle Baptist Church as their administrative secretary.
All right, cool. So that's a little insight on that.
Yes.
I want to switch gears real fast. And with that going on, you being a mother, having a job, you chose to be a part of a program that would help the community. And I want to know, like, looking around the projects, like, what made you feel as though something needed to be done in that moment? And it was called the Coachville Awareness Network. Like,
I saw young mothers and similar mothers my age that we needed to come together for some strength and some power to understand some of the programs and things that were offered to us. From the welfare program, they always had case workers. But I always realized being village, and I feel that, and from our African culture, it's tribal. We always looked out for each other. The elders were always respected and gave wisdom, and the younger mothers learned from the elders. I had some elders that helped teach me how to cook, because I was more so a tomboy growing up.
Yeah.
So I wasn't in the kitchen with my mom. So I ate, but I was out in the garden. So I can garden even now. I have a garden every year.
Yeah.
So I know how to grow my own. So I always...
we might gonna need that.
We gonna need that. We definitely gonna need it.
Come over and get some tomatoes.
You understand. So we learned to lean on each other. And then when I went to work, I had my neighbor that would watch my kids for an hour, because my kids were latchkey. They get home at 3. I got off at 4. So, we always believed in having an elder oversee your children. Your children weren't alone like they are these days.
Yeah, somebody was always
it always was an adult watching that kept a little discipline in your household in a ghost type of way.
Yeah, I understand that.
Yes.
I understand. So in that program, you guys spoke about, like you said, opportunities and
yes,
insight on certain things. And one of the things that I read, that you guys talked a lot about AIDS and stuff like that.
Yes, that just had started coming out, and we were a little fearful of it because we didn't know really where it came from.
Yeah.
When it first came out, we thought in our mind it was a gay type of thing.
Yeah.
Until we learned that it could come from a blood transfusion. A lot of people were dealing with it with that tainted blood that we didn't know, but it was something that we needed protection. So we made sure some of the young mothers would get involved with Planned Parenthood so they could kind of protect themselves in that kind of way. And we used to have a little forum so women could be more discreet about partners. and have a little bit more character, moral factors about having them around their children and things like that. So we were trying to grow the younger women up to be more steadfast in their future goals.
Yeah, that's good. That's great. And you started with, you got an old friend, Miss Diane Harris, right?
Yes,
So
that's my
y'all started
sweetheart.
that together, or it was something that you guys just came collectively and other people as well?
We came collectively because of the cause of AIDS, and she was just my good girlfriend. I was a little older than her, but I always called her my ice cream buddy because we'd always come together and have some ice cream and talk about our children together and the struggle of being single parents trying to raise children.
Miss Pam Depte and I were very close. Very close. We share a lot of the same joys, traumas. There were people that was actually jealous of our relationship, but we didn't let that affect us to what we had to do. Pam's like a lovely person, and I'm proud to say that she's my friend. We call each other ice cream because every time we have a talk, we would go to Dairy Queen and get ice cream. I help with the young women. Pam had a very close connection with the women in Coastville. She not only had fashion shows, but she gave them something to do so that they could find their worth in themselves and not judge themselves, their insides, with somebody else's outside. That was real important to Pam.
So if you could think back, how old were you around the time when you guys started this? Because you moved up there 17, a kid essentially, and then you chose to, be a leader at what?
I would say somewhere around 28, 30.
Oh, okay, 28, 30 years
30.
Old. Still young.
Because I was really laid back. I didn't really know about the streets and being independent, so I wasn't out jumping around, and I knew that I had to take care of my children. I was always home based, that my children needed certain things, and I had to provide shelter and clothing and make sure they eat, and keep them healthy, and definitely keep them in their school books. We always did that homework thing. They had schedules that they had to be in the tub, and they could get their snack before they went to bed, but I go over their homework and things with them.
So on top of the homework and things like that, you also made it fun for the kids.
Oh, yeah.
You guys had talent shows, dances. So where would y'all do the dances and stuff at?
There was they had a community room at 400 Oak Street. 400 was the old folks building. They were single apartments for elders.
Is that the one that was more so on Oak Street over
right on Oak Street, and it was kind of high rise, but they had a community room. And because of all the children, and we would hear the kids singing on the ramps and stuff, I got with my good friend Jerry Allen.
Yeah, that's my auntie.
And we got together and we said, let's have a little show or something for the kids to do, because they all out here running around. And we started to get a few of the children, Montez Old Jones, now Pastor Jones. He was one of the youngest ones, but he always had a spirit of not being afraid to give what he had. He kind of knew his gift at a young age. So, and then the girls were starting to just bud. So they'd had their little way. I said, let's do a little fashion show, because they had their Easter outfits, and a couple of them were lucky enough to get things for Christmas. And we started to get a group together. And because of my name, Dep, we said debutantes. And that's young women coming out.
Right.
And so we started to be the debutantes. And when we gave things, we called it Miss Pam Jams, because back then the old word was, we're jamming. We're jamming. So it became Miss Pam Jams. And we started to go up to the Union Hall. We started to go to 9th Avenue Community Center, the Masonic Hall upstairs. We'd have the floor just bouncing. Stevie Pugh, Jeff Marshall, they were some of my young DJs. They were just learning how to scratch a little bit. Leroy Hogarth, you know, they were learning how to jam on the wheels and stuff. And we just have a good old time giving the kids something to do, you know, something to do with their time, and letting them express themselves. I always try to teach young people how to speak. You know, you always are able to approach a person with conversation. You know, and if you can speak your mind and your vision.
I think, for one, you know, I want to say thank you for that, because the people that was in that program are probably never going to forget that. You know what I mean? That's important, because now today, the kids don't have nowhere to go. And even in that community, there was a community center for the kids there. And now I don't think there's nowhere to go for these kids to go be kids. You know what I mean?
It isn't.
And I just feel like the times have changed, you know? So
they have.
I want to speak about times changing back then, you know? So like in that era, you know, was a crack epidemic and things like that. And I'm sure that changed your experience in the project. So when it came, what was the turn that you realized it's getting bad up here, or the world is changing? Like, how did you feel in that moment?
Well, you know, it was the first time that I was even exposed to marijuana. You know, I didn't do any of that type of thing. But then marijuana started to ease, and I didn't know about anything like hard drugs. The hardest drug that people were doing in that era was like shooting heroin. And that was a hard drug back then, but it was only a small sector of people that did that. But crack cocaine took over the mothers. It changed the atmosphere in the household. It made them, you know, like just drop the moral factor that was in the house, the decency. You know, anybody, 5 and 6 people be in your house all day long and smoking, and the children come home and strangers. It just, it was a bit, and the children had to just do the best they could. And it brought a violent factor. You know, people were being killed and overdosing, and it was just a bad scene. People from the outside moved into our little small community and kind of took over, set up homes with young ladies. You know, single women wanted a partner, and they let somebody come in, and he would run a whole menagerie of dope dealing out of their houses and things like that. So it put a dangerous factor amongst our children in our home.
You could be 11, 12 years old and making a lot of money back then.
And so that was the whole thing.
So they come get your kids, and now your kid is
they jocking, and
for sure. So it definitely, I can only imagine it was damaging to the whole environment.
It was.
Yo, bruh, is that thing on?